here's what happens with an absorption refrigerator is you have the solution that's down in the vessel. It's got hydrogen, ammonia, sodium chromate, and water. It gets heated by either flame or the heat element. It turns to vapor and it goes up to the evaporator coil and it flashes and it pulls heat out of there. And then it goes through a series of chemical reactions. It's got to make its way back down that cooling unit in a zigzag motion by gravity. There's no moving parts. And so what has happened, and I've been researching this since I was at Winnebago in 1984, and the people bring their RVs to their homes. They put them in the driveway. They plug them into the garage so that they can cool the refrigerator down and they can pack their RV up. And so they're there for a day, sometimes 2 days. Sometimes people leave them there for a longer period of time. If you're not sleeping in that RV, you don't realize that it's not level. And that refrigerator needs to be level within 3 degrees, side to side, 6 degrees front to back. That's not very much, so you've got that unit out of level. You're running that stuff, that vapor goes up into the evaporator coil that turns to liquid, and it's supposed to come back down. But now all of a sudden you got it angled. And so it can't make that zigzag, and it sits in the corner, and it gets hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. And eventually then what happens is it flakes and it starts to block the cooling unit. And then the unit doesn't work anymore, or it works very inefficiently. And so what happens is that refrigerator is normally going to run at about 250 degree temperature in that cooling unit. Yeah. Well, if it gets blocked, it can get to 900, 1200 degrees. So all the refrigerators that are out in the market, I think I shouldn't say all, but 95% of them have been recalled. They've put in a temperature sensor in the top, and it will shut the refrigerator off when it gets to a certain temperature because of that blockage. And then what happens is that people have, the fire connotation has come, in my opinion, from when they had a few of the early units down by the boiler vessel would get a little crack in there, and you would get some ammonia smell, and they could catch on fire when you were using the LP system in there. And there were a handful of them, but it's just like anything else that gets exploded out in the internet, and then everybody's doing this stuff. And then what happens? I was just going to
say that. I was waiting.
Yeah. Well, then what happens is that the unit doesn't work good because you brought it to the driveway so many times, and now it's plugged. And they pull the refrigerator out, and they see this black kind of charred area up in the top, and they go, "Oh, my refrigerator caught on fire." Well, no, it didn't catch on fire. What happened is it's blocked. It got up to about 900 degrees. It started turning that insulation dark that shouldn't be there in the first place. Nothing should be touching that cooling unit, but you get these guys down the line say, "Oh, look, here's a cavity. Let's shove," so they start putting stuff in there. And, I've talked to Norcold and Dometic both that the cases that they have seen are so minor, and it's not that they don't, take it seriously, but they do. They put that new thing in. So this new Fridge Defend, all that is a temperature sensor at the top of the cooling unit that shuts the unit off, just like, but they're, the fires, they're doing the scare tactic thing. And so anyway, that's my opinion of it. Pretty animated. But I just think they've been getting a bad rap. And so
just to finish you off on that, I don't know what the percentage is, Dave, but 25 years in the repair, on the service drive, day in, day out, I've seen thousands upon thousands of units that I've put my hands on. I've had 2 that came in for fires. And those 2 were lack of maintenance and usually with some kind of pest intrusion. So, depends on what the owner's plugging into. Voltage wise has issues, how their batteries are. There's some issues with the manufacturers where they don't put the right, the unit into the cavity itself. So we're talking about like air restrictions and stuff like that, or insulation and stuff that comes loose, or things that need to get tucked back in place. But that's why maintenance is so important.
Yep.
If you have that standard refrigerator, even these new 12-volt refrigerators that are coming out, we need to keep an eye on those as things progress, because we don't know what problems we're going to be up against in the future.
Yep.
Lately, we've seen nothing but a bunch of, fuses popping and things tripping, and even shorting out some of those newer units.
Yep.
Just voltage issues. But
well, and
they got a bad rap. I mean,
yep.
How many cooling units do we replace a year? Maybe 3 to 5.
Yeah.
And usually it's a refrigerator that's 15, 20 years old.
Yeah. Well, and I have talked to a lot of service centers, and I've talked to, the seminars I do, I ask how many people have had a problem with an absorption refrigerator and the cooling units in them. And there are, I would say they're more than normal appliance that the cooling unit goes bad. But then I ask them, okay, how many people here take their RVs to their house before they get ready to go on a vacation?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And it's like, you don't, because you're not sleeping in it. You don't even think about leveling it. So you let it run 2 or 3 days.
So Larry, to answer your question, if you want to go ahead and put some kind of fire suppression unit in there, that's up to you. I don't think that you would need it. I would think that as long as you're checking, the backside of the refrigerator, make sure that everything's mounted down, secure, wind and stuff and air gets back behind those boxes and moves insulation around. So making sure that all that stuff is secure and not, nothing's rubbing or causing any issues, I wouldn't worry about it.
Right. Yep.
We're all insured, but and I mean, I've had a friend of mine owns a houseboat and was in Utah, and there was a big fire out there on Lake Powell one time that wiped out tons and tons of houseboats from a refrigerator fire. And so that was another one, and the Medic refrigerator, that was another one that caused a lot of this uproar. But again, it was a fluke thing that happened.
Yeah. And I would also
recommend chances of hitting on super lotto.
Yeah, check with your refrigerator manufacturer. You probably already have that temperature sensor mounted up on the cooling unit already that'll shut it off. So
anything new nowadays is going to have a thermal cutoff at the top of the cooling fan, of the fins up top. It's going to have if it's a propane chimney, there's going to be a thermal cutoff, and most of them nowadays have a almost like I can't think of thermal fuse itself. So if the fuse melts, it shuts off the power to the refrigerator. If the chamber gets too hot on 110 or propane, it shuts it off. And if the coils up top get hot, it shuts it off. And then the North Poles are the same way. They even